Hello everybody, I'm Becky and you're visiting my channel Springing Art. Thank you for being here today. Today we're going to talk about Akua Inks, which is our printmaking ink. I started using Akua Inks on my jelly pad because I like to use botanicals, and by the time I would place those, my acrylic paints would be dry and pretty much ruined any chance I had of getting a decent print. The Akua inks stay open pretty much forever because they do not evaporate to dry. The way they dry is by absorbing into paper or something absorbent. They don't dry or evaporate on a hard surface of any type. They don't evaporate on the jelly pads, so they will stay there for pretty much an unlimited amount of time, and you have plenty of time to arrange your prints. Okay, so what we're going to do today is find out whether the Akua inks do better if you have a flattened botanical or if you are using a fresh botanical. Now, when I say flattened, I mean that I have put the botanicals between paper and then flattened them with a heavy book of some type. But only for 2 to 3 hours, maybe half of a day. I want them to be flattened, but I do not want them to be dried or difficult to work with. And then the second thing that we'll do is to compare two different rice papers, and we'll compare those two rice papers with something like an exam paper. I call it my cheap paper. It's just the paper that I've had around for a long time that I wrap my paintings in, and I can't tell you exactly what it is, but it's not very absorbent. So we want to compare our absorbent rice papers with our non-absorbent or relatively non-absorbent exam paper. And I want you to take note of the fact that I'm starting to pull this negative print right now, and we're over 2 minutes into this video. And the paper, the ink that I have on my table beside me has been out for a while. I have that there because I find that it's easier to spread the ink when I put it on my roller and then on the jelly plate, as opposed to putting it on the jelly plate and then rolling it out from there. Okay, so this video doesn't get too boring. We're going to show you my process on one set of prints here. One negative, which is what I'm pulling now, and then one positive, which I'll pull here after this one. So you can see the procedure, what I do, how long it takes, and then we'll go straight into results. There's really nothing different from one pull to the next, so you're not going to be missing anything except boredom.
What you're putting in, all your hopes and efforts are all in vain. Who will pick you up when you've lost everything? Does it all become for granted with a wedding ring?
Okay, this first experiment, these are the negative prints that I pull off first, and I think it's pretty clear to see. This is the pressed flowers, these are the fresh flowers, and I think you can see here how crisp and clear this is, and we don't have that same clarity here with the fresh flowers. And here you can see these stems on the pressed flowers look really good, and on the fresh flowers, they're up in here, I think. You can't discriminate them nearly as well. So pressed versus fresh works much better. The pressed works much better. And as I mentioned before, these were pressed for maybe half of a day. They are not pressed until they're dry. They're just pressed until they're flat. Now here are the positive prints. So again, this is the pressed, and This is the fresh, and I think you can see again here how crisp these are. We've got some really good detailing going on. And then when you go over to the fresh, it's much more hazy. You don't have the crispness here. So overall, with your live botanical products that you want to use, I would recommend pressing them for about 2 to 3 hours to half a day. Don't press them until they're dry. Just press them until they're more flattened and can be easily manipulated. Okay, so we're going to compare. We're only using pressed flowers this time, or plants. We're going to compare 3 different papers. The first paper we're comparing is Yasutomo Scratch Pad rice paper. And this is an Oriental Art Supply rice paper on a roll, which is like a student grade. And then this is a cheap paper that I got for wrapping paintings in when I sell them. It is not very absorbent. Your rice papers are very absorbent papers. Okay, let's look at our first Yasutomo rice paper. And you can see this is very crisp and clean. There's no haloing it. Sometimes Akua Inks will give you a halo, especially on the positive, but sometimes on the negative also if you have too much ink down. These are nice and clear. This is the rice paper by Oriental Art Supply. And we also have very nice and crisp leaves and stems here. But when you get over to the cheap paper, you can see that there's not, the lines here are not crisp. They're smeared out because this paper is not very absorbent, so it's you know, the ink can't go into the paper; it just smears around. Okay, now we're going to look at the positives. The first thing I want to show you is you can see that there's a little bit more ink on this OAS paper, the Oriental Art Supply paper, and that's reflected down in this positive. You can notice it a little bit more. So here on the Yasutomo sketchpad paper, we have really nice detailing in here. This is quite nice. If we go over here, the level of detail is a little bit less, but I think that it's because of the amount of ink that's on here. However, these are really, really pretty. When we go over to our cheap paper, you see fairly good detailing, but you can see right here the smearing and the messiness around the edges of it, and just don't have clean, crispy lines here. So it's really, with these Akua inks, very important that you use a very absorbent paper. Everybody, let me see if I can quickly summarize this for you. We did 2 experiments. The first experiment was looking at whether using pressed flowers and pressed plants or fresh plants worked out better with the Akua inks. And I think it was very clear on that one that the pressed flowers worked much better. With the fresh flowers, you end up crushing them, and that causes a lot of smearing, and you don't get as crisp a print. I think this is probably true whether you're using the Akua inks or any of your acrylic paints. The second thing that we did was to look at 2 different rice papers and compare them to just a cheap, it's kind of like an exam table paper, would be the closest that I could compare it to. And in that, we saw that the more absorbent rice papers gave a much better print. Now, when I looked at this during my editing, I found that the Yasutomo sketchpad paper was actually a better paper than the cheaper OAS rice paper on a roll. Under high resolution, high magnification, that did have some fuzziness around the edges. It was not quite as crisp and clear a print as I got from the Yasutomo paper. So that's a bit of a change there. So, but regardless, any rice paper is going to be better than that cheap exam paper. As I have said several times, the Akua inks do not evaporate. They dry by absorbing into the paper. So when they absorb, they really need an absorbent paper to be able to do that. Otherwise, they're going to lay on the surface of the paper and be smeary. And I think that's what happened with the cheaper grade exam paper type of thing. Okay, so thank you very much for being here. I really encourage you to try the Akua inks. It's a totally different experience. There's a big learning curve on it, but it's a fun ink to play with. And of course, the major advantage is that, as you can see from this one, I think I got over 2 minutes, I think I got about 3 minutes of open time on this. So the amount of open time is pretty much unlimited. I've literally gone out, walked the dog, or gone to dinner and come back and pulled a print. So it's a great thing to work with if you have problems with your acrylic inks drying too quickly. All right, thanks for being here. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.